Hello, elder law and estate planning attorney Vinny Casiano here. I've been practicing law now for over 20 years, and in that time, I have literally drafted thousands of estate plans and thousands of estate planning documents. And one of the challenges that I face now, and even more so in the present day, is how do you plan for couples with blended families? So let's say you're married or about to be married, and you have children from a prior marriage or relationship. Perhaps both spouses have children from a prior marriage or relationship. So the challenge that you face is, how do you balance the needs of the spouse that survives? So one spouse is going to die before the other. So that spouse that's going to live, how do you balance their needs with those of these children from these separate marriages? It's common in first marriages to leave everything and all control to the spouse that survives. Whether that's a good idea or not, I'll leave that to another discussion. But certainly in first marriages, you don't have the concern that the spouse that survives is going to give the inheritance away to other children. They're both your children. So it's assumed they're going to take care of all of your children in the same way. Right? But in a blended family where you have children from other marriages, that may not happen. A lot of times what I see in plans that come my way that at this point the parents have died and now there's problems is that the spouses in first marriages, they often leave their estates to each other. If you continue to do that when you have a blended family, while each spouse may have promised the other that they were going to be fair and leave it equally to all the children, sometimes that just does not occur. And it's not necessarily because your spouse didn't want to do that. Lots of us are living into our 90s, even into being centurions. And when you live that long, your ability to recall and understand, starts to dwindle, and you are able to be influenced, sometimes unduly influenced by various people that are in your lives. So although you may have promised that spouse that you were going to leave everything fairly and equally to the children, that may not end up happening if you have just left everything to the surviving spouse. So what that does is it puts your children's inheritance at risk, right? So there are rights that a surviving spouse has with respect to inheritances that can certainly cause problems and thwart a deceased spouse's, the first spouse to die sometimes is what we call it, plan to benefit their children. Rest assured, there are ways to overcome this problem. But whenever there's any type of particular strategy you're going to put in place, there are always pros and cons to that. But let's just talk about certain things that can be done. First thing that you can do in these situations is you can actually make it so that any changes to an estate plan that are done after the first spouse dies or after the first spouse becomes incapacitated have to be approved by somebody other than just that spouse. Pros on that? Well, you're going to hopefully put somebody in charge that's going to make sure that things are fair and that your objectives are carried out. However, the bad part or the con of that is that the spouse that survives doesn't have control over the assets and may want to make changes that they're not able to do. One of the other ways that you can do this is you can break up a trust and the assets into 2 or 3 or 4 different trusts in which portions or parts of the trusts are irrevocable. They can't be changed. So you could just say, let's make it simple. Let's just say you have $2 million. First spouse dies. $1 million goes into a trust. That is irrevocable. The beneficiaries cannot be changed on that. The other trust is for the survivor, and they can make any changes they want to it. So the pros on that is, well, you've protected at least half of it, right, for the way you want it to go. And the spouse has the ability to do whatever they want with that other. The con of it is that enough money for that spouse that survives to continue to live on? So is it your priority to make sure that the spouse that survives is going to be taken care of? Or is your priority to ensure that the children from the first marriage of the spouse that dies are going to be taken care of? Not a question that an attorney can answer for you, that has to do with your own family circumstances. And that's where a good estate planning attorney is going to come in, and they're going to have these conversations and they're going to raise these issues. So if you have any questions regarding how you can create an estate plan that'll work for you when you have a blended family, don't hesitate to contact me at 619-800-6820.